Elena and Mateo had always only had each other. Orphaned at a young age, they had grown up side by side, surviving on scraps and unwavering loyalty. But now, as she looked into her brother's panicked eyes, she realized that their world was about to collapse. Mateo stood before her, his hands clenched tightly as if trying to steady himself. "I made a mistake, Elena." His voice was hoarse, exhausted. "I owe Dante Vasquez 2 million euros. Elena froze. The name meant nothing to her, but the fear in Mateo's eyes sent ice through her veins. Dante Vasquez, a powerful businessman, ruthless, a man who never gave without taking something far greater in return. I agreed to clear my debt, but only on one condition. Mateo lowered his head as if ashamed to even say the words. Elena could feel the storm brewing inside her, a sinking dread settling deep in her stomach. He wants you to be his wife. The room fell eerily silent. No, no way. Elena shook her head, stepping back as if the words themselves could hurt her. Mateo looked at her, desperation in his eyes. Please, Elena, I have no other choice. If you say no, we lose everything. Elena felt as if the walls were closing in on her. A marriage with a man she had never met, a life dictated by someone else's choices. But when she looked at Mateo, the only family she had left, the brother who had always shielded her from pain, she knew she had no choice. Her hands trembled as she whispered the words that sealed her fate. Okay, the room suddenly felt colder. Just one word, and her life was never the same again. The wedding took place in a grand palace in the heart of Lisbon, where crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, their light dancing across white silk-covered tables and crystal wine glasses filled with the finest Portuguese red. Elena stood before the mirror, her fingers unconsciously gripping the delicate lace of her expensive wedding gown. Her bare back was reflected in the glass, her skin flawless, but her eyes empty. Beyond the doors, guests laughed and toasted to a marriage built on nothing but necessity. She turned slightly, her gaze landing on Dante Vasquez. A dangerous man in a perfectly tailored black suit, his expression unreadable, as if this wedding was nothing more than another business deal. His deep blue eyes flicked toward her, cool and unwavering. When the priest asked for her vow, her own voice sounded distant, almost detached. I do. No kiss, no tenderness, only the sound of applause from the guests, and a slight nod from the man who was now her husband. The reception stretched for hours. Her friends, oblivious to the truth, teased her about keeping a man like Dante hidden from them. Elena, he looks like something out of a movie. Tall, powerful, and those eyes. You're so lucky. Lucky? Elena forced a smile, while across the room, Dante silently observed her, his glass of wine untouched. By nightfall, they arrived at Dante's private estate, where luxury oozed from every corner, making her feel like a guest in her own life. She barely breathed as she stepped into the grand bedroom, golden light casting soft shadows over silk-covered sheets. She turned to say something, anything, but then dizziness crashed over her. The room blurred, her vision tunneling. Dante moved faster than she expected, his strong arms catching her before she hit the floor. Elena. His voice was deep, right beside her ear. That was the last thing she heard before darkness took her. Elena woke up in an unfamiliar place. White silk curtains swayed gently in the night breeze from the open window, revealing the shimmering coastline of Lisbon under the moonlight. The cool satin sheets against her skin sent a chill through her, but what truly woke her was the warm, masculine scent lingering on the oversized shirt she was now wearing. Dante's scent. She sat up abruptly, realizing that her wedding dress was gone, replaced by his white button-down. Elena inhaled sharply, fighting off the panic rising in her chest. She couldn't remember anything after she had fainted. You're awake. A deep voice sent a jolt through her. Dante stood by the window, his hands tucked into his pockets, watching her with his usual unreadable expression. The dim city lights cast shadows over the sharp angles of his face, making him look even more dangerous. What happened? Elena rasped, her throat dry. You fainted. Dante shrugged. Stress, or maybe that wedding dress was too heavy. Elena pulled the blanket up to cover herself, feeling strangely exposed despite being fully dressed. Who changed my clothes? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Dante took a slow step toward her, the sound of his heavy footsteps echoing ominously in the quiet room. The weight of his presence was suffocating. Elena's fingers tightened around the silk sheets, her heart hammering in her chest. I did. His voice was calm, too calm. Elena's breath caught in her throat. Heat crawled up her spine, a mix of embarrassment and unease. Don't look at me like that. Dante leaned in, placing one hand on the bed, forcing her to tilt back slightly. His voice dropped to a husky whisper. I didn't touch you. Not yet. A warmth spread through her, unsettling and unfamiliar. Dante studied her for a second longer before straightening up. Get some sleep. Tomorrow I'll introduce you to your new life. He turned and left the room, leaving Elena with a racing heart and 1,000 unanswered questions. The first days of Elena's marriage to Dante Vasquez were a tense silence, filled with stolen glances and unspoken challenges. She tried to keep her distance, but Dante never let her forget who held the power in this relationship. One afternoon, as she sat curled up on a lounge chair on the balcony reading, he approached, hands in his pockets, his gaze studying her like an unsolved puzzle. You seem to enjoy avoiding me. His voice was smooth, unreadable. Elena inhaled deeply, refusing to look up. I'm just trying to adjust to everything. Dante crouched beside her, tilting her chin up with one firm finger, forcing her to meet his eyes. Adjusting to being my wife? Or adjusting to how I make you feel? Her breath caught. Everything about him, from his voice, his gaze, to the way he invaded her space, was dangerously magnetic. One evening at a formal dinner with his business associates, Elena sat beside Dante, the golden glow of chandeliers reflecting in her untouched glass of wine. But what truly stole her breath was Dante's hand on her thigh beneath the table. His fingers traced slow, deliberate circles, not enough to be obvious, but enough for her to feel every motion. Elena went rigid, trying to focus on the conversation, but her body betrayed her. She glanced at him, his expression composed, casually engaging in discussion as if nothing was happening, but the faint smirk on his lips told her otherwise. By the time they returned home, Elena snapped. Do you think that was funny? She demanded, her pulse still racing. Dante turned to her, amusement flickering in his deep blue eyes. Not funny, Elena. He took a step closer, backing her against the cool marble wall. A reminder. A reminder of what? She challenged. Dante leaned in, his breath hot against her lips. That you belong to me. And when his lips finally claimed hers, possessive, demanding, Elena realized she no longer wanted to run. Elena didn't know when everything changed. Maybe it was the first kiss Dante gave her, possessive, demanding, yet awakening something in her she'd never felt before. Maybe it was the way he touched her, not accidental, never casual. The way he always stood too close, always looked at her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. Or maybe it was her. She had tried to keep her distance. She had convinced herself that this was just a contract, that she was just another piece in his business deal, but now her own heart was betraying her. One evening, after an extravagant gala at a seaside hotel, Dante brought her back to the estate. As they stepped into the grand foyer, Elena turned suddenly, unable to hold it in any longer. Why do you do it? The words slipped out before she could stop them. Dante, halfway through unbuttoning his shirt after a long evening, paused. Do what? Her hands clenched into fists. The touches, the looks, the way you make me feel like I'm losing my mind and then act as if nothing happened. Dante studied her for a long moment, his eyes unreadable, before reaching into his pocket and producing a small velvet box. Elena blinked, her stomach twisting. He flipped it open, revealing a white gold necklace with a teardrop-shaped diamond shimmering like liquid fire under the soft light. Her breath caught. Why? She whispered, unable to tear her gaze away. Dante said nothing at first. Instead, he stepped behind her, his presence overwhelming. When his fingers brushed the back of her neck, fastening the delicate chain in place, a shiver ran down her spine. Because you're mine, Elena." The words weren't just a statement. They were a vow. Her breath hitched. "But this is just a contract." She tried to keep her voice steady, but his fingers brushing over her collarbone sent a tremor through her. Dante smirked, his gaze sharp, knowing. "A contract?" He leaned down, his lips nearly brushing her ear. "Then why do you tremble every time I touch you?" Elena parted her lips to argue, but Dante had already turned her to face him. She should have pushed him away. She should have told him he was wrong, but when his lips brushed over her neck, when his warm breath sent shivers down her spine, she knew she had already lost. Elena didn't know when everything had changed. She once believed this marriage was nothing more than a cold contract, but now, every time Dante touched her, every time he looked at her with those deep, commanding blue eyes, she felt herself being pulled into a storm she couldn't escape. Tonight, they attended an exclusive gala, a gathering of Lisbon's most powerful figures. As Elena stepped into the grand ballroom, Dante's firm hand rested on her lower back. All eyes turned to them. Dante came to a stop at the center of the room, raising his glass, his voice deep and steady. "I'd like to introduce you all to my wife, Elena Vasquez." A wave of applause and congratulations followed, but Elena barely heard it. What made her heart pound wasn't the crowd. It was the way Dante said, "my wife," with certainty, with possession, as if she truly belonged to him. All evening he never left her side. His hand stayed on her waist, his fingers brushing against her skin in subtle, possessive touches. By the time they returned to the estate, Elena turned to face him, her heart racing. "Dante, I don't know what I'm doing anymore," she whispered. His gaze held hers, still full of control, yet something softer lingered there. "You don't need to know." He stepped closer, tilting her chin up. "You only need to know one thing. You're mine, and I will never let you go." And when he kissed her, deep, demanding, as if sealing her fate, Elena knew she was no longer just part of the deal. She had truly become Dante Vasquez's wife. Elena didn't realize it at first. In the weeks following that gala, her life with Dante had begun to shift. He was no longer a stranger. She had married out of obligation. Dante started taking her places, candlelit dinners on his private yacht, weekend escapes to the Portuguese countryside just to watch the sunset. He never said, "I love you," but every glance, every touch spoke volumes. One early morning, Elena woke up with an odd sensation in her stomach. Before she could even process it, nausea hit her hard. She rushed to the bathroom, gripping the sink as the wave of sickness passed. Dante appeared behind her, his voice steady yet laced with concern. "Elena," she tried to compose herself, but as she met his gaze in the mirror, she realized she was just as terrified as he was. After a doctor's visit, the result left her speechless. "I'm pregnant," she whispered, her hand instinctively resting on her stomach. Dante stood behind her, silent for a moment. Then, suddenly, he stepped forward, kneeling before her, his strong hands pressing gently against her stomach. "Not just one," he murmured, his deep voice uncharacteristically unsteady. "Two." Elena's lips parted in shock. Dante looked up at her, and for the first time, his usually cold blue eyes reflected something different. Disbelief, joy, and maybe even love. He leaned in, pressing a slow kiss against her stomach, his breath warm against her skin. "You've given me the greatest gift, Elena." She felt his heart beat against hers as he pulled her into his arms, holding her as if he never wanted to let go. And in that moment, Elena knew she wasn't just Dante Vasquez's wife. She was the woman he would love for the rest of his life. Laughter echoed across the sprawling gardens of the Vasquez estate, blending with the golden morning sunlight. Two little figures, a boy and a girl, with soft brown hair and striking blue eyes just like their father, ran across the lush green grass, their tiny footsteps leaving imprints on the earth. Elena stood on the veranda, a cup of coffee in her hands, a gentle smile playing on her lips as she watched them. "Mammy, look at me. Little Lucas, full of energy, reached out to catch a butterfly, but it fluttered away just before he could touch it. He pouted, only to watch in awe as the delicate creature landed softly on his sister Sophia's tiny hand. "The butterfly likes me better, Lou," Sophia giggled, her bright eyes twinkling. Elena chuckled, shaking her head. This was an everyday scene, her twins constantly teasing each other. A strong arm wrapped around her waist from behind. "What are you smiling at?" Dante, still as powerful and mesmerizing as ever, leaned down to place a soft kiss against her neck. Elena sighed into his warmth, the man who had once turned her world upside down, now feeling like home. "Look at them," she whispered. "Lucas is just like you, always wanting to be in control." Dante smirked, his gaze full of pride as he watched his son. "And Sophia is like you, gentle but impossible to push around." Just then, Sophia ran up to them, her tiny arms wrapping around her father's leg. "Pappy, carry me," she pleaded, her blue eyes shining. Dante Vasquez, the man the world once feared for his ruthless power, could never say no to his daughter. He lifted her into the air, spinning her around as she giggled with delight. Not wanting to be left out, Lucas tugged at Elena's dress. "Mommy, I want to fly too." Elena laughed, bending down to scoop her son into her arms, pressing a soft kiss to his hair. Dante looked at his wife then, something unspoken but deeply understood passing between them. "3 years ago I never thought I could have this," he murmured. Elena met his gaze, squeezing the strong hand that had once pulled her into a world of power and temptation. "3 years ago, I never thought I could love you this much." Dante chuckled softly before capturing her lips in a slow, tender kiss. Elena sighed against him, feeling the warmth of his embrace. As they pulled apart, she glanced at their children, Lucas chasing after butterflies, Sophia giggling in Dante's arms. "Can you believe this is our life?" she murmured, her fingers lacing with his. Dante pressed a kiss to her forehead, his voice low but certain. "With you, Elena, I wouldn't change a thing." And under the golden sunlight, surrounded by the laughter of their children, they knew this happiness would last forever.